The alarm screamed through the bridge of the human trading ship Endeavor. Captain Jake Morrison rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the flashing red lights on his control panel. 3 days of hauling mining equipment to the Outer Rim colonies had left him and his small crew exhausted. All he wanted was to reach the next station and get some real sleep. "Captain, we're picking up a distress signal," called out his communications officer, Linda Park. She was young and eager, fresh from the academy with bright ideas about making a difference in the galaxy. "It's coming from Sector 77 Alpha," Jake frowned. That sector was deep in Veltari Empire space. The Veltari were not exactly friends to humans. They tolerated human traders because humans worked cheap and asked few questions. But they made it clear that humans were barely worth their "Notice, what kind of signal?" Jake asked. Linda's fingers moved quickly over her console. "Ship in distress. Life support failing. The transmission is weak, but I'm reading one life form aboard." Jake's engineer, Maria Santos, looked up from her station. She was a tough woman, in her 40s, who could fix anything that flew, floated, or crawled through space. "Captain, that sector is off limits to Coalition vessels. If we go in there and the Veltari catch us, they'll impound our ship and throw us in prison." "I know the regulations, Maria," Jake said quietly. He stared at the main screen where the distress signal showed as a blinking dot in empty space. "But someone's dying out there." His medical officer, Robert Kim, stepped onto the bridge. He was a gentleman who had joined the crew after losing his practice on Earth to gambling debts. "If their life support is failing, they don't have much time. Maybe an hour, maybe less." Jake felt the weight of the decision. His crew looked at him with mixed expressions. Some showed worry about getting into trouble with the authorities. Others showed the same thing Jake felt in his gut. They could not just let someone die when they had the power to help. "Linda, send a message to Coalition Command. Tell them we're responding to a distress call in Veltari space under emergency protocols." "Yes, sir," Linda said, her voice excited. "Maria, plot a course for that signal. Best speed." "Aye, Captain," Maria replied, though Jake could see the concern in her dark eyes. The Endeavor changed course and jumped to hyperspace. The journey took 45 minutes. When they dropped back into normal space, they found themselves looking at a small Veltari transport ship drifting dead in space. The ship's hull showed scorch marks from weapon fire. "Scan that vessel," Jake ordered. Linda worked her instruments. "I'm reading one life form. Veltari, definitely. The ship's power core is almost dead. Life support is failing fast." "Weapons fire?" Jake asked. "Looks like laser cannons. Recent damage. Someone wanted this ship disabled, not destroyed." Jake understood. In the Veltari Empire, political enemies often arranged accidents for each other. Someone had wanted the person on that ship to die slowly in space, making it look like equipment failure. "Maria, can we dock with them?" Maria studied her screens. "Their docking port is damaged, but I can jury-rig something. Give me 20 minutes. "You have 10, Jake said. "Robert, get your medical kit. We might have an injured person over there." While Maria worked on the docking problem, Jake studied the damaged ship through the main viewer. It was a standard Veltari design, sleek and efficient like everything the Veltari built. But something about the weapon damage bothered him. The shots were precise, aimed at specific systems. This was not random pirate activity. "Docking tube connected," Maria announced. "It's not pretty, but it'll hold." Jake grabbed his emergency suit. "Robert, you're with me. Linda, keep scanning for other ships. If someone did this on purpose, they might come back to make sure the job is finished." The two men made their way through the makeshift docking connection. The Veltari ship was dark and cold. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the metal walls. The air smelled of burned electronics. And fear. They found the ship's occupant in the main cabin. She was a Veltari female, tall and pale with the silver hair that marked her as an officer class. She was unconscious but breathing. Her elegant uniform showed burns from an electrical fire, and blood marked where flying debris had cut her face. Robert immediately began checking her vital signs. She's alive, but barely. Hypothermia, smoke inhalation, and what looks like a concussion. We need to get her to our medical bay right away. Jake looked around the cabin. Personal items were scattered everywhere from the attack. He saw military medals, family pictures, and official documents marked with high-level security codes. This was not just any Veltari. This was someone important. Can we move her? Jake asked. Carefully. Her people are tougher than humans, but she's been breathing bad air for hours. They carried the unconscious Veltari woman back to the Endeavor. Robert immediately took her to the medical bay while Jake returned to the bridge. He found Linda monitoring communications channels with a worried expression. Captain, I'm picking up encrypted Veltari military transmissions. Multiple ships are moving toward this sector. How long before they arrive? Maybe 30 minutes. Jake made another quick decision. Maria, disconnect from that ship and get us out of here. Head for the neutral zone. What about salvage rights? Maria asked. That ship has some valuable equipment. Leave it, Jake said. We came here to save a life, not to get rich. As the Endeavor jumped back into hyperspace, Jake went down to check on their unexpected passenger. He found Robert working steadily over the Veltari woman. Medical monitors showed her vital signs slowly improving. How is she? Jake asked. Better. The hypothermia was the biggest problem. Her species can handle cold better than humans, but everyone has limits. She'll live, thanks to you deciding to answer that distress call. Jake watched the steady rise and fall of the woman's breathing. Any idea who she is? Robert showed him an identity chip they had found in her uniform pocket. Commander Thys of the Veltari Imperial Navy. According to this, she's assigned to the Intelligence Division. Intelligence, Jake repeated. That explains the professional job someone did on her ship. Captain, Robert said quietly, do you think we did the right thing, getting involved in Veltari politics? Jake looked at the unconscious woman. She seemed smaller and more fragile away from her damaged ship. Robert, I don't know anything about Veltari politics. I just know that someone was dying and we could help. That's enough for me. The medical monitors continued their steady beeping. Commander Thys slept peacefully, unaware that her rescue had begun a chain of events that would eventually shake the foundations of galactic civilization. For now, she was simply a person who had been helped by strangers who expected nothing in return, and sometimes that is exactly how empires begin to fall. 3 months had passed since Commander Thys returned to the Veltari imperial capital. The great city of crystal towers and floating platforms stretched across the surface of Veltaris Prime like a jewel against the purple sky. From her office, in the Naval Intelligence Building, Thys could see the entire capital spread out below her, but her mind was not on the beautiful view. Instead, she found herself thinking about the humans who had saved her life. Every day she remembered Captain Morrison's words when she had tried to pay him for the rescue. Just pass it forward, he had said, as if helping a stranger was the most natural thing in the galaxy. Thys had tried to understand this behavior. She had accessed every file the Veltari Empire had on human culture. What she found confused her more than it explained anything. Humans helped each other even when there was no benefit to them. They formed bonds with people they barely knew. They remembered kindness for years and felt obligated to return it. This was completely different from Veltari society. Among her people, every favor had a price. Every relationship was based on what each person could gain. Loyalty went to whoever had the most power or offered the best rewards, but humans seemed to operate on completely different rules. Commander Thys, her assistant called from the outer office. Admiral Corvin wants to see you immediately. Thys straightened her uniform and walked through the gleaming corridors to the Admiral's office. Corvin was an old-school Veltari who believed firmly in the Empire's superiority over all other species. He had never liked Theis's assignment to intelligence work, preferring officers who followed orders without asking questions. "Sit down, Commander," Corvin said without looking up from his data pad. "I have been reviewing your recent reports. Your work has been adequate, but I have concerns about your attitude." "My attitude, sir?" Corvin finally looked at her with his cold silver eyes. "You have been asking too many questions about human activities in our territory. You have requested files on human culture and psychology. Some of your colleagues are wondering if your recent experience has affected your judgment." Thais felt a chill run down her spine. In the Veltari Empire, having your judgment questioned could end a career or even a life. "Sir, I was simply trying to better understand a species that we interact with regularly. Knowledge of their behavior patterns could be useful for intelligence work." "Perhaps," Corvin said slowly. "But I want to be very clear, Commander. Your loyalty belongs to the Empire first, last, and always. If you ever forget that, there will be consequences." After leaving Corvin's office, Thais returned to her quarters feeling shaken. She realized that her interest in human behavior had been noticed and was being seen as a weakness. But she could not stop thinking about Jake Morrison and his crew. Their kindness had been real and freely given. They had risked their own safety to help her without knowing who she was or what she could do for them. That evening, Thais was reviewing intelligence reports when she came across something that made her blood freeze. Captain Jake Morrison had been arrested by hegemony security forces on charges of smuggling illegal weapons. The arrest had happened 2 days ago at a space station in neutral territory. Thais quickly accessed more files. The charges were obviously false. Morrison's ship had been carrying mining equipment, not weapons. But the evidence had been planted so carefully that proving his innocence would be almost impossible. Someone wanted Jake Morrison to disappear into a prison colony. She sat back in her chair, her mind racing. This was exactly the kind of political game that happened constantly in the galaxy. Someone with power had decided that Morrison was inconvenient, so they had arranged for him to be removed. It was efficient and legal and completely unfair. For most of her life, Thais would have simply noted the information and moved on. Political. Prisoners were not her concern. Her job was to serve the Empire, not to worry about the fate of individual humans. But every time she tried to dismiss Morrison's arrest, she remembered his face when he had refused her offer of payment. "Where we come from, you help someone in trouble," he had said. "That's just what you do." The words echoed in her mind as she stared at the arrest report. Morrison was in trouble. By his own standards, that meant she should help him. But helping him would be dangerous and possibly illegal. It would require using her position and resources for personal reasons. It could destroy her career. Thais spent the next 2 days gathering information. She learned that Morrison was being held at Detention Center 7, a maximum security facility designed for political prisoners. She discovered which officials had signed the arrest orders and which judges would hear his case. She identified the transportation schedules and security protocols. Then she began making calls. "Director Walsh, this is Commander Thais of Veltari Intelligence. I need to discuss a matter of mutual interest regarding prisoner transfers." "Magistrate Cranen, I have information that might be valuable to you. Information about corruption in AI, the hegemony security forces." "Captain Torres, I believe there has been an error in one of your prisoner classifications. I can provide evidence that might interest the review board." Each call was carefully planned. Thais used her position and knowledge to create pressure and opportunities. She called in favors she had earned through years of professional relationships. She shared intelligence that made her contacts eager to help her in return. It took 5 days of careful work, but finally everything was in place. Jake Morrison would be transferred to a minimum security facility for a medical evaluation. During the transfer, there would be a computer error that would classify him as released on bail. By the time anyone noticed the mistake, he would be long gone. Thais arranged to meet Morrison at the spaceport where he would be released. She wanted to see his face when he realized what had happened. She wanted to explain why she had risked everything to help him. Jake Morrison walked out of the detention transport looking tired and confused. He had been in prison for over a week, not understanding why he had been arrested or what evidence existed against him. When he saw Thys waiting for him, his expression showed complete surprise. "Commander Thys? What are you doing here?" "I arranged your release," she said simply. Jake stared at her. "You what? How? Why?" "You saved my life. 3 months ago, you refused payment and told me to pass it forward. I am passing it forward." "But this must have cost you," Jake said. "Your position, your career. You could get in serious trouble for this." Thys nodded. "Yes, I could. But you taught me something, Captain Morrison. You showed me that some things are more important than following orders or protecting yourself. You helped me when I was in trouble, even though it was dangerous for you. Now I am helping you." Jake was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he said, "I don't understand. Among your people, don't you usually expect something in return for favors?" "Usually, yes," Thys admitted. "But I am learning that human ways might be better. Your loyalty is not for sale. It is earned through actions, not bought with promises. This creates something stronger than any political alliance." As Jake prepared to leave the spaceport, Thys realized that her life had changed forever. She had acted according to human principles instead of Veltari ones, and it felt right in a way that surprised her. What she did not know was that word of her actions was already spreading through quiet channels. Other Veltari who had been helped by humans were watching and learning. The seeds of change had been planted, and they were beginning to grow. Dr. Elizabeth Harper walked through the medical tent on Rigel 7, checking on her patients one last time before the night shift took over. The plague had hit this colony world hard, killing thousands before anyone understood what they were fighting. But now, after 6 weeks of constant work, they were finally winning the battle. The Crystalline Collective had originally sent only their own doctors to fight the disease. But when those doctors started dying from exposure to the plague, they had quietly asked for help from human medical teams. Humans, it turned out, had natural resistance to many diseases that killed other species easily. Elizabeth was tired beyond words. She had been working 18-hour days since arriving on Rigel 7. Her medical team had lost 3 doctors and 6 nurses to the plague, but they had saved over 10,000 lives. The Crystalline Collective government would never publicly admit that humans had done most of the work, but Elizabeth did not care about credit. She cared about saving lives. "Dr. Harper," called a voice from the main treatment area. "Patient in bed 47 is asking for you." Elizabeth walked over to bed 47 and found Zen Kalar, one of the highest-ranking crystalline officials on the planet. 3 weeks ago, he had been dying from the plague. His crystal-like skin had turned black with infection, and his internal organs were shutting down one by one. Elizabeth had worked for 36 hours straight to develop a treatment that could save his life. "Doctor," Zen said, his voice still weak but much stronger than before. "I wanted to thank you before you leave tomorrow." "You already thanked me," Elizabeth replied with a tired smile. "Many times." "Not enough," Zen said seriously. "You saved my life when my own people had given up on me. You worked without sleep, without rest, risking your own health to help someone you had never met before." Elizabeth sat down in the chair beside his bed. "That's what doctors do, Zen. We help sick people get better." "Perhaps that is what human doctors do," Zen said. "But among my people, doctors work only for those who can pay their fees. They do not risk their lives for strangers. They certainly do not work for free in plague zones." "Well," Elizabeth said, "I guess humans are just stubborn that way." Zen was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that would change the course of galactic history. "Dr. Harper, if you ever need anything at all, you contact me personally. I owe you a debt that can never be fully repaid." 2 months. Later and 3-star systems away, Tom Bradley was having the worst day of his working life. The construction site on Forge Prime was behind schedule, the equipment kept breaking down, and his Mokari supervisors treated the human workers like they were barely intelligent enough to carry tools. Tom was a good worker who took pride in his job. He had been building things his whole adult life, first on Earth and now on colony worlds throughout the galaxy. But the Mokari made it clear that humans were only hired because they worked for low wages. They were not respected, and they were not valued. The accident happened during the afternoon shift. A support beam in the new factory building cracked without warning. Tom heard the metal screaming under stress and looked up to see a section of the ceiling starting to collapse. Directly underneath the failing structure, a group of young Mokari were playing during their school break. Tom did not think about his own safety. He did not consider that these children belonged to a species that looked down on humans. He just saw kids in danger and reacted the way any decent person would react. "Get out of there!" he shouted, running toward the children. The Mokari kids looked up in confusion. They could see the ceiling starting to fall, but they were too scared to move. Tom reached them just as the support beam gave way completely. He grabbed 2 of the smaller children and threw them clear of the collapse zone, then turned back for the others. The ceiling came down with a crash that shook the entire building. When the dust settled, rescuers found Tom Bradley crushed under several tons of metal and concrete. The 5 Mokari children he had saved were injured but alive. Tom had given his life to protect them. The funeral was the largest gathering of humans and aliens that Forge Prime had ever seen. The families of the children Tom had saved insisted on paying for everything. They spoke about his bravery and his sacrifice. They said that no Mokari had ever shown such courage in protecting children who were not even his own species. But the real change began when the families returned home and started asking questions. Why were human workers treated so poorly when they were clearly good people? Why did Mokari society look down on beings who would die to protect Mokari children? Why were there laws that prevented humans from becoming full citizens when they had proven their worth so clearly? The questions led to protests. The protests led to political pressure. Within a year, the Mokari Republic passed new laws giving full citizenship rights to any human who wanted them. The families of the children Tom had saved personally sponsored the legislation, using their influence to override centuries of prejudice. On the other side of the galaxy, Master Sergeant Lisa Park was leading her peacekeeping unit through the ruins of what had once been a thriving city. The Zaloni homeworld had been torn apart by civil war for 20 years. Now, finally, there was a peace agreement, and refugees were starting to return to rebuild their lives. Lisa's job was to protect the refugee camps from raiders who wanted to steal supplies and take prisoners to sell as slaves. It was dangerous, work that paid poorly and got little attention from the galactic media. Most species sent their worst soldiers to peacekeeping duties, treating it as a form of punishment. But humans approached peacekeeping differently. They sent some of their best people to help protect civilians who could not protect themselves. Lisa had volunteered for the assignment because she believed that everyone deserved to live in safety. The attack came at dawn on a Tuesday. 200 raiders armed with military weapons hit the camp from 3 sides, trying to break through the defenses before the peacekeepers could organize a response. Lisa's unit had only 40 soldiers to protect over 3,000 refugees. "Hold the line," Lisa ordered over the radio. "Do not let them through." For 6 hours, the human peacekeepers fought off wave after wave of attacks. They were outnumbered and outgunned. But they had better training and something the raiders did not have: absolute determination to protect the innocent people behind them. When coalition reinforcements finally arrived, they found that Lisa's unit had won the battle. But the victory had cost them dearly. Lisa Park and 12 of her soldiers had died defending people they had never met before and would never meet again. The Zaloni refugees never forgot what the humans had done for them. When they finished rebuilding their world 2 years later, The first law their new government passed was a formal alliance with the human colonial authority. The second law established a memorial to Lisa Park and her soldiers in the center of their capital city, Admiral Theiss, now working quietly to coordinate, with other aliens who had been helped by humans, received reports of all these events. She began to understand that what had happened to her was not unusual. Across the galaxy, humans were helping others without expecting anything in return, and those who had been helped were starting to help humans in return. She created a secure communication network connecting Zen Kalar in the Crystalline Collective, the Mokari families who had changed their government's laws, the Zaloni leaders who remembered their human protectors, and dozens of others who had similar stories. "We are all connected by the same thing," she told them during a secret conference call. "We have all been helped by humans when we needed it most. Now it is time for us to help them." What Theiss was building was not a conspiracy or a political movement. It was something much more powerful, a network of gratitude that crossed all species lines and all political boundaries. It was held together not by fear or greed, but by the simple human idea that when someone helps you, you should help them back. The galaxy was changing, one act of kindness at a time. General Patricia Ross stood at attention in the center of the Coalition Council chambers. Around her, representatives from dozens of alien species sat in a great circle, their eyes focused on her with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. The chamber was built to intimidate, with its soaring ceiling and walls covered in the symbols of ancient galactic powers. At the head of the circle sat Chancellor Valdris Prime of the Praetorian Empire. The Praetorians had ruled large parts of the galaxy for over 1,000 years. They were used to being obeyed without question. Their pale blue skin and tall, thin bodies gave them an appearance that many species found frightening. Valdris Prime was no exception. "General Ross," Valdris began, his voice cold and formal, "you have been called before this council to explain certain irregularities in human behavior throughout Coalition space." Patricia kept her expression neutral. She had been expecting this summons for months. As the highest-ranking human in the Coalition military, she often found herself defending her species to alien politicians who did not understand human nature. "What irregularities would those be, Chancellor?" she asked. Valdris activated a holographic display that showed a star, map of the galaxy. Red dots marked dozens of worlds where humans had significant populations or business interests. "Our intelligence services have noticed unusual patterns in these systems. Local governments have become remarkably cooperative with human requests. Trade agreements consistently favor human colonies. Military cooperation has increased dramatically." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Most disturbing of all, we have documented cases where alien officials have acted directly against their own government's interests in order to help humans. This suggests a level of influence that your species should not possess." Patricia looked at the star map. Each red dot represented a place where humans had helped someone in need. She thought about Jake Morrison rescuing Commander Thiss, about Dr. Harper fighting the plague on Rigel 7, about Tom Bradley dying to save alien children. "I'm not sure I understand the problem, Chancellor," she said carefully. "The problem," interrupted Ambassador Krell of the Hegemony Council, "is that your species appears to be running some kind of sophisticated influence operation. No species gains this much political leverage without a coordinated strategy." Patricia almost smiled at that. If only they knew how uncoordinated humans really were. There was no master plan, no secret conspiracy. Humans just helped people because it seemed like the right thing to do. "Ambassador," she said, "I can assure you that there is no coordinated strategy. Humans help others because that's what we do. It's part of our culture." "Impossible," said Valdris Prime. "No species acts against their own interests without expecting something in return. Your people must be offering bribes or threats to achieve this level of cooperation." "We don't offer bribes or make threats," Patricia replied. "We just help people when they need it." The council chamber erupted in sounds of disbelief and anger. Representatives from different species spoke over each other, their translation devices creating a chaos of voices. Patricia could hear words like lies and conspiracy and impossible in a dozen different languages. Valdris Prime raised his hand for silence. "General Ross, we have evidence that contradicts your claims. For example, can you explain why Commander Theiss of the Veltari Navy used her position to illegally release a human prisoner? Why did Zen Kalar of the Crystalline collective freeze Praetorian assets to pressure for better treatment of human workers? Why have the Mokari changed their citizenship laws specifically to benefit humans?" Patricia thought about how to answer. The truth was simple, but apparently impossible for these aliens to understand. "Chancellor, in each case you mentioned, humans had previously helped those officials when they were in trouble. Commander Theiss was rescued by a human ship when her own vessel was sabotaged. Zen Kalar's life was saved by human doctors during the Rigel 7 plague. The Mokari citizenship laws were changed after a human construction worker died protecting Mokari children." "You see," Valdris said triumphantly, "you admit there is a pattern. Your species deliberately helps key officials and then calls in favors when you need them. This is exactly the kind of manipulation we suspected." "It's not manipulation," Patricia said, feeling frustrated. "It's just basic decency. We help people because they need help. We don't do it to gain political advantage." "Then explain this," said Ambassador Krell, activating another holographic display. 3 months ago, human merchants reported suspicious hegemony security activities to local authorities on 7 different worlds. This resulted in the exposure of a major corruption network within our organization. How did scattered human traitors coordinate such an intelligence operation? Patricia looked at the display and recognized what had really happened. Human traitors had noticed hegemony officials acting strangely and had reported it to local authorities because they thought something was wrong. There had been no coordination, no intelligence operation, just humans doing what they always did, speaking up when they saw something that didn't look right. "There was no coordination," she said. "Those traitors reported what they saw because they thought it was suspicious. That's what honest people do." The laughter that filled the chamber was not friendly. These alien politicians could not conceive of a species that acted on principle rather than self-interest. To them, Patricia's explanations sounded like elaborate lies designed to hide a massive conspiracy. Valdris Prime stood up, his tall frame imposing in the dim light of the chamber. "General Ross, your explanations are insulting to our intelligence. No species achieves this level of influence through random acts of kindness. Your people are clearly running the most sophisticated intelligence operation in galactic history. We are not running any operation," Patricia said firmly. "We help people. They remember it. Sometimes they help us back. That's not a conspiracy. That's just how relationships work." "Perhaps among primitive species," Valdris said coldly. "But civilized races understand that every favor has a price, every alliance serves a purpose, and every act of kindness hides a selfish motive. Your continued denials only prove how dangerous your deception has become." The Chancellor looked around the chamber at his fellow council members. "It is clear that humanity has become a threat to the established order of galactic civilization. Their influence network must be dismantled before it can destabilize our governments further." Patricia felt a chill run down her spine. "What are you proposing?" "Immediate restrictions on human movement and commerce," Valdris announced. "Suspension of human diplomatic immunity. Investigation of all human organizations for evidence of conspiracy. And the arrest of key human leaders for questioning about their intelligence operations." The vote was swift and one-sided. Only a few, smaller species voted against the measures, and their votes did not carry enough weight to matter. Within an hour, new laws were passed that would make it almost impossible for humans to do business or travel freely in coalition space. As Patricia was escorted from the chamber by Praetorian guards, she realized that the established powers had made a crucial mistake. They thought they were fighting a human conspiracy, but what they were really fighting was something much more powerful: genuine loyalty earned through kindness and sacrifice. And across the galaxy, the aliens who had been helped by humans were watching. They saw their human friends being treated as criminals for the crime of being decent people. They saw an ancient empire using its power to crush the very kindness that had saved their lives. The Praetorians thought they were ending a threat to their authority. Instead, they were about to discover just how dangerous human loyalty could be when it was shared by friends across the galaxy. Captain Sarah Wells had been in worse situations before, but not many. The Praetorian detention facility was designed to break the spirit of anyone unfortunate enough to be locked inside its gray metal walls. Sarah had been here for 3 days, charged with espionage after her crew had rescued miners from a classified accident that the Praetorians had tried to cover up. The accident had happened on Kepler Station, a mining facility that officially did not exist. Sarah's cargo ship had been passing through the system when they picked up emergency transmissions from workers trapped in collapsed tunnels. The Praetorians claimed the accident was a state secret, but Sarah knew they were really trying to hide their illegal use of slave labor. Her crew had saved 47 miners before Praetorian security forces arrived to arrest them. Now her ship was impounded. Her crew was scattered across different detention centers, and she was facing charges that could put her in prison for life. Sarah was sitting on the hard metal bench in her cell when the alarms started blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed in the corridors outside, and she could hear guards running past her cell door. Something was happening, but she had no idea what. What Sarah did not know was that news of her arrest had spread through Admiral Theis's network faster than hyperspace communications. Within hours of her capture, aliens across the galaxy who owed debts to humans were receiving coded messages with a simple request: help our friend. On Veltaris Prime, Admiral Theis was in an emergency meeting with her fleet commanders when she received word of Sarah's arrest. She had been expecting something like this ever since the Coalition Council had passed their new anti-human laws. But expecting it and being ready for it were two different things. "Admiral," said Captain Corvin, her second in command. "High Command has ordered us to increase patrols along the human trade routes. They want us to intercept any human ships that might be carrying contraband." Theis looked at the orders on her screen. Between the lines, she could read the real message. The Praetorians wanted the Veltari to help hunt down humans like criminals. They wanted her to betray the people who had taught her the meaning of true loyalty. "Captain Corvin," she said quietly, "how many ships do we have ready for immediate departure?" 12 heavy cruisers and 30 escort vessels, Admiral. "Why do you ask?" "Because we are about to find out if loyalty is stronger than law." Theis activated her personal communicator and sent a message to every ship captain in her fleet. The message was simple: Jake Morrison's people need our help. Who remembers what loyalty means? Within an hour, 11 of her 12 heavy cruisers had signaled their readiness to follow her anywhere. The 12th captain requested permission to join them as soon as he could transfer his family to safety. Theis had never been more proud of her fleet. But the Veltari were not alone. On distant Crystalline Prime, Zen Kalar was using his position as Minister of Finance to freeze all Praetorian assets in crystalline banks. It was an act that could start a war, but Zen remembered Dr. Harper working 36 hours straight to save his life. "Sir," his assistant said nervously, "the Praetorian ambassador is demanding an immediate meeting. He says you are violating treaty agreements." "Tell the ambassador that we are conducting a routine audit of suspicious transactions," Zen replied calmly. "These things take time." In the Mokari Republic, The families whose children had been saved by Tom Bradley were using their political influence to shut down shipping routes that supplied Praetorian military bases. They convinced the Republic Senate that it was a trade dispute over mining rights, but they were really trying to put pressure on the Praetorians to release Sarah Wells. On Zaloni Prime, the rebuilt government was doing something even more dramatic. They were formally withdrawing from the Coalition Council and declaring their independence from all galactic treaties. Their announcement was broadcast across the galaxy. "We will not be part of any organization that treats heroes as criminals." Admiral Theiss coordinated the response from her flagship as her fleet moved toward Praetorian space. She was in constant communication with alien officials across the galaxy, all of them working together for the first time in galactic history. What amazed her was how naturally they cooperated. There were no arguments about who was in charge, or what each group should do. They all shared the same goal: help the humans who had helped them. "Admiral," reported her communications officer, "we are receiving a transmission from Colonel David Chen of the Human Colonial Marine Corps. He is requesting permission to join our operation." "Put him on screen," Theiss ordered. The image of a tough-looking human soldier appeared on her main display. "Admiral Theiss, I understand you are mounting a rescue operation for Captain Wells. I would like to offer my services." "Colonel, this is not your fight," Theiss said. "We are acting outside of legal authority. If we fail, we will all be branded as criminals." David smiled grimly. "Admiral, Sarah Wells is my friend. Her crew saved my unit during the evacuation of Tau Ceti. I owe her my life and the lives of my soldiers. This is exactly my fight." "Then welcome aboard, Colonel. We can use all the help we can get." The rescue operation that followed was unlike anything in galactic military history. Instead of fighting their way to the prison, the rescue team found that most of the obstacles had already been removed by helpful aliens. Veltari technicians had provided security codes for the prison systems. Crystalline hackers had created false transfer orders that would move Sarah to a minimum security facility. Makari dock workers had sabotaged the hyperspace communications array that would have called for reinforcements. When Colonel Chen's Marines finally reached Sarah's cell, they found that the door was already unlocked. A Zaloni guard stood nearby, with an apologetic expression. "Sorry about the delay," the guard said. "We had to wait for the shift change. The next guard shift is all humans and Veltari. They will not report anything unusual for at least 6 hours." Sarah looked around in amazement as she was escorted to freedom. "How is this possible? How did you coordinate all this?" "We did not coordinate anything," Admiral Theiss explained as they boarded her flagship. "Your people have friends throughout the galaxy. When those friends learned you were in trouble, they acted to help you. No one gave orders. No one made plans. They just did what felt right." "But this could start a war," Sarah said. "The Praetorians will not let this go unpunished." "Let them try," said Zen Kalar, who had traveled from Crystalline Prime to join the operation. "They will find that they no longer have as many allies as they thought." Indeed, the Praetorians were discovering exactly that. Their attempts to punish the species who had helped with the rescue were met with economic sanctions, diplomatic protests, and military threats from dozens of worlds. Species that had never worked together before were suddenly united in their determination to protect the humans who had helped them. The crisis lasted 7 days. For 7 days, the galaxy held its breath as the ancient Praetorian Empire found itself isolated and outnumbered by a coalition of species who had one thing in common. They remembered human kindness. On the 7th day, Chancellor Valdris Prime called for an emergency session of the Coalition Council. But when the session convened, half the seats were empty. The species who had withdrawn from the coalition in protest outnumbered those who remained loyal to the Praetorians. The old galactic order was crumbling, and it was all because humans had done what they always did. They had helped people who needed help, and those people had remembered. As Admiral Theiss watched the news reports of governments falling and alliances shifting across the galaxy, she reflected on how much her life had changed since Jake Morrison had rescued her from that drifting ship. She had learned that loyalty was not something you bought or commanded. It was something you earned through your actions and honored through your choices. The galaxy was about to learn the same lesson. 5 years had passed since the 7 Days Crisis changed the galaxy forever. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the new Coalition headquarters on Haven Prime, looking out at a sight that still amazed him. Ships from dozens of different species moved in peaceful formation through space, working together in ways that would have been impossible under the old system. Jake was now Ambassador Morrison, though he still felt uncomfortable with the title. He had never asked to be a diplomat or a symbol of human values. He had just wanted to help people and make an honest living hauling cargo between the stars. But the galaxy had decided that his simple act of rescuing Commander Theiss made him a perfect representative of what humans could offer to galactic civilization. "Ambassador Morrison," called a familiar voice behind him. Jake turned to see Admiral Theiss approaching, her silver hair now showing streaks of white from 5 years of rebuilding galactic government. She wore the uniform of the new Coalition, security force with its symbols representing unity between species rather than domination by the strongest. "Admiral," Jake said with a smile, "how many times do I have to tell you to just call me Jake? And how many times do I have to remind you that you are now one of the most important humans in the galaxy?" Theiss replied, "Your actions started all of this. You deserve the respect that comes with that responsibility." Jake looked back out at the ships moving through space. "I still don't understand how rescuing one person could lead to all this. I was just doing what anyone would do." "That is exactly the point," Theiss said, joining him at the observation window. "What you thought was normal behavior was actually revolutionary. You showed the galaxy that there was a different way to relate to other beings. Instead of using power to control them, you could earn their loyalty through kindness." The new Coalition government was built on principles that humans had always taken for granted, but that seemed radical to most alien species. Instead of the strongest species ruling over the weaker ones, all species had equal representation. Instead of making decisions based on who had the most military power, the Coalition made decisions based on what would help the most people. It had not been an easy transition. The collapse of Praetorian dominance had left a power vacuum that many species had tried to fill. There had been 3 small wars and dozens of diplomatic crises as the galaxy adjusted to its new reality. But gradually, the system had stabilized around the simple idea that government should serve people rather than rule them. "The morning briefing is about to start," Theiss said. "General Ross wants to discuss the new peacekeeping mission to the Outer Rim." Jake followed Theiss through the corridors of the Coalition headquarters. The building was designed to reflect the new spirit of cooperation, with architecture that blended styles from dozens of different species. Human practical design mixed, with Veltari elegance, crystalline mathematical precision, and Mokari artistic expression. In the briefing room, General Patricia Ross was addressing a mixed group of military officers from across the galaxy. She had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Coalition forces after the old military hierarchy had been dissolved. Her first act had been to establish new rules of engagement that prioritized protecting civilians over achieving military objectives. "The situation in the Outer Rim is complex," General Ross was saying. "The hegemony remnants are still trying to establish independent territories by enslaving local populations. We have requests for help from 17 different worlds." Jake took his seat at the briefing table next to Zen Kalar, who now served as Minister of Resource Allocation for the Coalition government. The crystalline official had used his financial expertise to create a new economic system that rewarded cooperation instead of exploitation. "What kind of forces are we looking at?" asked Colonel David Chen. who had been promoted to head of Coalition Special Operations after his role in rescuing Captain Sarah Wells. "Nothing we cannot handle militarily," General Ross replied. "The real challenge is that these hegemony groups are using the same tactics the Praetorians used. They offer protection to local governments in exchange for control over their resources and populations. In other words," said Zen Kalar, "they are trying to rebuild the old system where the strong dominate the weak." "Exactly," General Ross confirmed. "Our job is to show these worlds that there is a better alternative." Jake listened to the discussion with interest. Over the past 5 years, he had learned that military problems were often really political problems in disguise. The hegemony remnants were not just using force to control territory. They were exploiting the fact that many species still did not understand how cooperation could be more effective than domination. "What if we approach this differently?" Jake suggested. "Instead of just defeating the hegemony forces militarily, what if we demonstrate the benefits of joining the coalition?" "What do you have in mind?" General Ross asked. "The same thing we have always done," Jake said. "We help people who need help. We send medical teams to treat their sick, engineers to repair their infrastructure, teachers to educate their children. We show them through our actions that the coalition offers something better than what the hegemony can provide." Admiral Thies nodded thoughtfully. "It worked before. Every species that joined the coalition did so because they had positive experiences with humans first." "But that approach takes time," Colonel Chen pointed out. "People are suffering right now under hegemony control." "Then we do both," General Ross decided. "We send peacekeeping forces to protect civilians from immediate harm, and we send humanitarian teams to show them what the coalition can offer for the future." After the briefing ended, Jake found himself walking through the memorial garden that had been built in the center of the coalition headquarters. The garden honored beings from all species who had died fighting for the principles of cooperation and mutual aid. Tom Bradley's name was engraved on a stone wall next to Master Sergeant Lisa Park and dozens of other humans who had given their lives to help others. But the garden also honored aliens who had risked everything to help their human friends. There was a statue of a Veltari admiral who had died defending a human colony from pirate attacks. A crystal sculpture remembered crystalline officials who had been executed by their own government for refusing to freeze human assets. A living tree from Mokari Prime grew in memory of Republic senators who had been assassinated for supporting human citizenship rights. "They all understood the same thing," said a voice behind Jake. He turned to see Captain Sarah Wells, now Director of Coalition Humanitarian Operations. They understood that loyalty is not about owing someone a debt. It is about choosing to do the right thing, even when it costs you something. "Sometimes I wonder if we deserve all this," Jake said, gesturing at the garden and the headquarters beyond. "All we did was help people. It does not seem like enough to build a new government on." "That is exactly why you deserve it," Sarah replied. "You help people because it is the right thing to do, not because you expect to get something back. That is the kind of leadership the galaxy needs." A soft chime indicated that the afternoon session of the Coalition Council was about to begin. Jake made his way to the council chambers, where representatives from over 300 species gathered to make decisions that would affect trillions of lives across the galaxy. The session began with a report from the Outer Rim. The Coalition peacekeeping mission was already showing results. Hegemony forces were withdrawing from worlds where Coalition humanitarian teams had arrived first. Local populations were choosing cooperation over domination when they saw the benefits for themselves. As Jake listened to the reports of lives saved and freedoms restored, he reflected on how much the galaxy had changed. 5 years ago, most species had believed that power came from the ability to force others to obey. Now they were learning that real power came from inspiring others to follow willingly. The session ended with an announcement that always made Jake smile. A new species had requested to join the coalition, bringing the total membership to over 400 worlds. They had made their decision after human medical teams had helped them fight a disease outbreak, following the same pattern that had brought so many others into the coalition family. After the session, Jake returned to his quarters and sent a message to his old crew on the Endeavor. They were still hauling cargo between the stars, still helping anyone who needed it, still doing the job they had always done. In his message, Jake told them about the new species joining the coalition and about the success of the Outer Rim mission. Then he added a personal note. You probably think I am living some kind of grand adventure here on Haven Prime, making important decisions that shape the galaxy. But the truth is, the most important work is still being done by people like you. Every time you help someone in trouble, every time you show kindness to a stranger, every time you do the right thing just because it is right, you are building the future we all want to live in. Jake sealed the message and looked out his window at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans were still doing what humans had always done. They were helping people who needed help, showing kindness to strangers, and proving that the best way to change the universe was simply to be decent to each other.